Okay, I will go ahead and intro, and hopefully people will um, be able to finish joining by the time we get to the most important stuff. But for now, welcome. This is our webinar on virtual college visits. Since we suspect a lot of 2021 is going to involve virtual visits rather than in person. So we're going to sort of walk you through how to make the most of that. So my name is Rachel Edgell. I am one of ESM Prep's college coaches. I'm based in London, but I'm joined by two of my colleagues who are based in the US, Brad Harris and Eric Harder. And I think we can go ahead and pass the mic over to Brad if you want to just jump right in.
Sure. Thanks, Rachel. So we're going to spend some time just talking about thinking beyond campus first and foremost. So this kind of thought doesn't really change between back in the day before COVID when you could go and visit these campuses and now, even though a lot of the visiting you're going to be doing in this era is virtual, it's still important to think about the place itself beyond campus. Where do you want to live over the next 4 years potentially? And it might seem pretty basic and, just as a very elementary step to consider something like Google Maps. But especially for parents that are trying to wrap your minds around this new environment that maybe your child is considering to grow roots over the next 4 years, Google Maps is a great place to start. And so just for example, we can look at a college like Bowdoin College. It's a small but very good school in Maine. I grew up in Maine, so this is sort of my old backyard. But for people that are, living in California or perhaps even overseas, the small college terrain in the Northeast, for example, is a very unique region. And it's great to just start wrapping your mind around it through Google Maps. You can look at the surrounding environment. Obviously, Maine's is very rural, lots of forests. Portland is probably your closest city. It's right on the ocean, so there's some environmental learning you could do. You can zoom out and map your way down to Boston or even to New York City. How far is it to drive to those different larger cities if you did want to connect with a larger airport or a larger metropolitan area? I think Google Maps is great too because you can navigate photos. Sometimes these are official, sometimes these are just taken by individuals. So if you've never seen this before, I think it's a really fun way to do a virtual tour. And if you would like, I'm sure many of you know this feature, but some of you might not. So let's zoom all the way in on Bowdoin College and just let the information here populate a little bit. Down on the lower right, there's this little person, and you can drag this person anywhere you want to in Google Maps and just drop the person and walk around, literally. So you can go on campus. Oh, it looks like our person is being photographed right now. But what's great about Google Maps is that for a lot of popular campuses in particular, Google's done a great job taking photographs and sort of enabling your own little self-guided virtual tour. In addition to all the other research you're going to do, you can stroll around the grounds yourself and look around. So this is a really great tool, and I encourage people to check this out. Google Maps has lots of other functionality as well. You can look at place names, how the campus is set up and structured and so forth. Another thing to think about, of course, especially if you're talking about a school like Bowdoin that's in Maine, is the weather, some other metrics about just the physical place that you're going to be living. So if you're the kind of person who really hates the cold, a place like Bowdoin might not be for you. If you really love the beach, that's definitely something to keep in mind. The rocky coast of Maine may not be the environment for you. So it always is worthwhile to just get a snapshot of the weather. Weather.com is a great resource. So right now, if you're waking up and thinking about going to class in Brunswick, Maine, where Bowdoin is, you're going to be bundling up for 25-degree weather. And you better have an extra pair of socks for tonight because it looks like it's going to drop down to the low teens. So these are all sometimes kind of revelations to people that aren't really used to thinking about that physical environment of the place. You can get a more extended forecast if you want to see some trends. There's more information on weather.com, but these are all great resources that are always useful when you're starting that research for a college. And don't overlook Wikipedia. Later on, Eric, my colleague who's on the call as well, is going to do some more kind of an in-depth dive, Rachel too, on what colleges might present to you for information about their history, their culture. But Wikipedia could be one of those very neutral 30,000-foot view objective resources, presenting a lot of quantitative information about the schools and just some history about the schools. So for Bowdoin College has a pretty long history. It's pretty prestigious in Maine. So there's a lot that you can read here, not just about its history, but its academics, its rankings. This can maybe complement some of the other research you're doing in things like Princeton Review or Fisk Guide to Colleges, student life. So, Wikipedia seems obvious when you think about it, but perhaps it's something you would have overlooked. So don't discount Wikipedia. It can be useful as well. Okay, logistics, getting there from here. We get wrapped up in the classes and the academics and, are you a good fit for this school in terms of, the professional opportunities and so forth. But what about just getting there? What about, traveling home for Thanksgiving or having your parents come and visit you for, campus events or things like that? It's really important for you to start to, really understand the logistics of these different options. So there's lots of different tools online that you can use for this. I think one of the best that I would recommend is called kayak.com. It's really easy to use and it presents all kinds of different, logistical options for you. So I have this pre-selected for plane flights. So what happens if you decided to enroll at Bowdoin College, which is near Portland, Maine, and Portland is your closest airport, and maybe your family is still in California, maybe in Sacramento, and you're thinking about coming home for Thanksgiving, let's say. Just knowing that the average trip could take you between 8 to 12 hours, and you're gonna have to connect. You're not gonna find nonstop flights from Portland all the way back to Sacramento. That could actually be something you wanna consider. If you have any kind of family needs, if you know you're gonna have to travel home frequently, or if this is just something that doesn't bother you, maybe that is an adventure that you enjoy traveling, across the country. That's good to keep in mind. And looking at prices too, obviously prices are going to change over time. But kayak is great because it gives you estimated price changes over time. So it can help you decide, are these exceptionally expensive or are these pretty representative of the type of cost associated with traveling to and from campus? And then for parents as well, if you are planning a trip to see your child and you want to look ahead and imagine what that's going to look like, kayak offers you, information on places to stay, where to rent a car, how much those things cost. And if you wanted to use alternative transportation like trains, for example, to move around that environment, you can find that information on kayak as well. So those are just a few of the tools that I would recommend when you start to think about the logistics and the physical environment of where you might want to live someday. The last thing I'd like to mention is just putting down roots. Most students are going to be in college for 4 years. That's pretty typical, and that's a long time. When you're 18 years old, that's a significant chunk of your life, and it's a very formative period of your life. So I think it's important to really acknowledge that after 4 years or more in a particular environment, you're going to become attached, in many cases to that environment, to the people that are there. So beyond campus, just professionally, what are the opportunities for internships or career prospects? Given that a lot of your network is physically going to be tied to that environment, you're going to leverage that network professionally for perhaps a summer internship or a job after college. And so it's important to think about, do I feel okay about being rooted in this place even after college? And in my case, I grew up in Maine. I now live in California. I love where I live. That was a thoughtful decision. But for some people, I think you just sort of end up in an environment thousands of miles away from your friends and family, or maybe where you grew up. And it's important to be thoughtful about that and how the momentum of your life just ends up keeping you in an environment that you've been in for a long time. Likewise, how close are your friends and family? Do you have other family in the area? If you wanted to see, a relative quickly, would you be able to, or would that take, 8 to 12 hours of plane flights, and does that matter to you? How far away from home are you really comfortable putting down those roots and really growing in that new environment? So think through these logistics with your family, and maybe be mindful of what that looks like just beyond the school itself. Okay, I think with that, I will turn it over to Rachel.
All right, thank you, Brad. So I'm going to talk about what is maybe the most obvious source of information for college research, but one that I think is often underused. And so I'm going to talk about different ways to use the school website, especially now that for students that are international students or just far away from campus, this might be, one of the main ways that they can actually explore the university. I guess, one word of warning before I really get into detail is, again, coming from an international student perspective, be careful not to assume that universities are the same or even overly similar. A lot of my students, initially come to me and they just have these sort of brand name universities, and there's nothing wrong with those universities, but then when we actually look at the characteristics of the different universities, we see that they are wildly different universities. And, the student is going to be happy in a certain type of university and not necessarily another. And so just because that name is familiar does not necessarily mean that it's a good fit for you. So I'm going to talk about how to determine whether or not a university is a good fit for you. So some main things to sort of start with would be areas of study. And I have an example here from Princeton University. And the reason I use Princeton in particular is that a lot of students will say, oh, I really want to go to Princeton and I want to study business. Well, Princeton doesn't have a business degree. It doesn't have a business major, concentration, or whatever it might be called, which is fine. You could study economics or something else. But it's really important to know that going into it. If business is what you want and you want that sort of combination of economics and marketing and accounting and so forth, then Princeton's probably not the best fit if that's what's important to you. So just making sure that you know what you want to study and making sure the university has that. So, go onto the university website and look at their majors, their minors, their concentrations, any other sort of academic type program, and just spend some time combing through that and seeing, okay, what is my first choice major? What's my second choice major? What else would I want to potentially study at this university? Another thing, I guess, to keep in mind would be, once you find that area of study, does it focus on the particular sub area that you want it to focus on? So if we go back to my first example, and a student decides, okay, I won't do business, but I'll study economics at Princeton. And then they say, well, behavioral economics is my specialty. Well, maybe Princeton again is not the best fit then. There's universities like the University of Chicago that are, world renowned for behavioral economics, and maybe that's actually a better fit academically. So keep all of that in mind, read the sort of departmental website and get a good idea of what it means to study whatever the major is at that particular university. Other things to keep in mind are curriculum. So we've got a spectrum that goes from an open curriculum where there are no distribution requirements to a core curriculum where you might have a situation like at Columbia where all freshmen are reading the same books at the same time as each other, and all sophomores do the same thing the next year. For some students, that's great. It builds this sense of community. And for other students, they find that sort of stifling, that they don't get to choose all their classes and explore the things that they want to explore. So again, just have a general idea of, what do I want out of my university experience? And does this particular university or these particular universities fit that vision? Another good example is MIT. When we talk about curriculum, MIT has a stereotype that, is probably based on a grain of truth, that it's, a very STEM-oriented university. But what a lot of students are surprised to find is that MIT students actually are required to take at least 12 courses in humanities or communication type courses, so reading and writing. And students don't, if you really, really only want to study math, for example, again, MIT is maybe not the best place for you if you don't want to have to take any sort of math or science-based courses. So again, just know your preferences, know your strengths, know what you want, and then do your research on the school's website. And then the last main area to consider is campus life. I think Brad sort of hinted at this, but you aren't just studying for 4 years. You're living on campus for 4 years or nearby campus for 4 years. This is your home. And you may only be in classes for 15 hours a week or something. And then, evenings and weekends, you need to do something. So make sure that wherever you go, there are things that you enjoy doing or things that you want to explore doing, whether that's student organizations or student groups, or just having other opportunities off campus that look interesting to you. So again, keep in mind that you are living at this university for 4 years, and make sure that this looks like a place that you want to live. I think next slide, please, Brad. So in addition to figuring out whether a university is a good fit for you, you need to figure out whether you are a good fit for this university. So one way to do that is to try to get a sense of the university's culture, which can be done fairly easily on the website, because again, the university is the one that has created this website. They're the ones that produce this material. So they're trying to show you who they are. So on the website, look on the homepage at the featured stories that they're, sort of cultivating and choosing to show you, and look for trends if they're focused on a lot of research opportunities that have been happening on campus. If they talk about community outreach, that gives you an idea of what they sort of value and what they're really proud of that happens on their campus. In addition, look for repeated words and phrases. So I don't know an example off the top of my head actually, but some universities, when you look at their websites, you'll see the same words repeated again and again and again. So, maybe that's curiosity or innovation or whatever it might be, but you'll be able to get a sense of, again, what they're looking for and whether or not you would be a good fit for that university. Another place to look on the website would be things like the university's mission statement, where they explain what they as an institution hope to achieve, and make sure that aligns with your sort of personal values as well. You can read their history, which again is something that they've put together. And so they're focusing on the parts of their history that they think are the most important. You can look at their motto. Just to use Princeton again as an example. When I was a student at Princeton, their motto was "in the nation's service and in the service of all nations," something slightly different now. But, that motto showed that Princeton valued service, and they valued having sort of a global mindset and serving not just your local area, but humanity as a whole. And so that was something that they were looking for in applicants. And then I've just got a little sample here on the slide where you can see quite clearly, I think this is Boston University, where I can't even remember my own slide, where they write out their mission and their vision very clearly, and you can see this is exactly the type of university they are, and this is their culture that they want to continue growing, and these are the values that they want to see in students as well, so that you become part of their community and part of their tradition. Okay, next slide, please. Another way to look if you are a good fit for a particular college is to just Google, what does X university look for in a student? And sometimes you'll find blog posts by admissions officers where they literally say, we want students who are curious and open-minded and, service-oriented or whatever it might be. It's not a secret in a lot of cases. They know exactly what they're looking for. They just need to see that you demonstrate that in your application. You can also look at class profiles. So sometimes this is called freshman profile or admitted student profile or something along those lines, but it typically has the word profile in it. Again, you can just Google any particular university's profile, and you'll see here I've got this example on the left where it gives an idea of The average GPA, if you're in an American system, it gives oftentimes the percentiles for standardized tests. So they might have 25, 50 to 75, and then 75 and above. You want to just make sure that you have a competitive application. So your GPA should be close to that average. Your test scores should be at the very least in that sort of middle chunk of the percentile range, but higher is always better. And if not, if you are on the sort of low end, that's fine. It is a spectrum. So they do admit students that are below that level, but then you want to make sure that the rest of your application is that much stronger to sort of balance everything out. Other things that you can see on class profiles would be demographics, which could be interesting to note if you are from an area that's underrepresented in the previous classes profiles. That could be something to sort of play up in your application. And you can just sort of note, I think, again, another sort of misconception is that public universities in the US, for students that are out of state or that are international students, they don't quite realize that a lot of these universities have admissions caps for students who aren't in-state students. And so, to actually see those numbers, it helps, I think, give a better idea of, how competitive it is. Like, there's only this many students who aren't from California that are admitted. So these are all good things to look at. And then the other way to tell if a college is a good fit for you is to look at the supplemental essay prompts. So I've got an example here. This is George Washington University. But these essay prompts are written by admissions officers. A lot of times they'll take a previous year's prompt and they'll tweak it ever so slightly just to change the sort of answers that they're getting. So these are very, very carefully thought about in terms of the wording, and you should take them fairly literally and try to parse out what exactly the university is looking for by asking this particular question. So if we look at George Washington's examples, the first one, actually I picked this as an example because these are quite explicit. They explain the reason for why they're asking these questions. So they're saying our students frequently interact with policymakers and world leaders, and our alumni can shape the future of global affairs. So that said, if you had the power to change, and then same with the second one, we encourage students to think critically and to challenge the status quo. So, does this blah, blah, blah. So when you read these questions, I think you should feel, not necessarily have an idea of, I know exactly what I want to write about, but you should be excited to think about it. You should be looking forward to brainstorming your answer. And I think if you read a prompt and you're just filled with dread and you have no idea, how to even begin thinking about it, then that can again be a sign that maybe this is not a great fit for you. So if you were to read this, for example, and you think, I don't, want to have any sort of impact on policy or, I don't want to change things, then maybe George Washington is not a great university for you to have on your college list. Yeah, and I think, next slide, please, Brad. So I just want to walk through an example of how this is done. So if we sort of put on our anthropologist caps and look at Georgetown as an example, Brad, if you could just kind of scroll down slowly through the front or the homepage, past the COVID stuff, which I think is on every university nowadays, so that's not too telling. But so right here we see an example. Georgetown is a Jesuit university. They have this Catholic tradition. And so they make it very clear that they are educating the entire student, so not just your brain, but your heart as well. They want students who are passionate about things like social justice and who are, willing and able to do some self-reflection and to grow as people during their time at college. And if you just keep scrolling a little bit, please, Brad. They're kind of pointing out their location and what that means for students. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved in politics or to take part in nonprofit work or research. a word of warning, I think it's important to think about where you want to go. So if we take Brad's advice and we think about, would I be happy in DC? But when you are applying, make sure that your application materials, your essays are focused on the university more so than the location, because what Georgetown might do, for example, is ask, well, if you're so excited about DC, why do you want to come to Georgetown versus American University, for example? But yeah, so I think if if we were to kind of click on academic life and then go to restless inquiry, please. Again, you can see, they're hinting and sometimes quite explicit about what they want in a student. So, restless seekers constantly question knowledge, connect ideas. They want people that are curious and that are making these connections, outside of the classroom and tackling the world's most challenging problems. So again, as you're doing your research and as you're looking at these websites, this should, sound like you. You should be reading this and think, oh, that's, I can relate to Jada, and I believe in these things and I am curious about these things. And if that's true, then this would be a great fit for you. And, if you're reading this and it just feels very, different to your personality and to your interests, then again, maybe not a great fit. So this is why research is super important. I would spend, at the bare minimum, a solid hour just going through everything on a website, looking at, everything that I've talked about before, all the academic options, all the extracurricular options, looking at their history and their motto, and just trying to get a sense of that culture before you decide whether or not you're a good fit for a particular university and whether it's a good fit for you as well. So I think that sums up my section, and I'll pass the reins over to Eric.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to be talking about social media, online tools, really leveraging these pieces that now we can't see the campuses in the same way by visiting them, but by going through their websites, and there's a variety of things that you can use. Almost all campuses that could be on your final college list are going to have their virtual tour on their website. Oftentimes they will request your email address, which is really good because that is going to give you credit for having visited that campus for a lot of schools as well, especially in the COVID environment. But the more that you're getting tracked by these schools, especially if they're a school of interest, the better. So a school's website and their virtual tours are going to have very curated types of videos. They could be coming from the marketing department. They could have really cool shots of the school. Still, you were able to get into that campus and look at how pretty it is and the cool features that it could have, and really get the feeling of the typical architecture and what you would like or not like about it. But you always have to be kind of cautious with a school tour. Is they're going to show you all the best parts. They're not going to give you a lot of maybe the parts that aren't as popular, maybe the dorm that is a lot further away of a walk to where maybe you'd be going to class. So you have to take it for what it is, but it's going to give you a really good insight into how kind of pretty that campus can be. The second spot, and some schools will actually use YouTube as their hosting for their videos, but almost every school does have a YouTube channel. And the cool part about that is they're going to usually upload a variety of different types of videos and different types of things that you can see within the campus. So virtual tours, but maybe you're now starting to see some dining halls, maybe you see some dorms, maybe you're seeing people that have tagged in and are able to kind of get a different viewpoint. A YouTube channel is really, really helpful. Now, if you're on YouTube and you're typing directly into the school, like let's say you're just typing Georgetown University virtual tours in YouTube, sometimes those will not be tracked because the school's not pulling your email address or requesting it from YouTube. That can only be done through the school website. So I always recommend starting at the school website, look at their virtual tour, start there, get your email, get that tracked, that kind of starts that process of the school, knowing you're interested in them. And then YouTube can start to give you a little bit more variety. The third one is Campus Reel and UVisit. There's a lot of these smaller startups that are also now becoming pretty big that show you thousands of videos from someone's cell phone. So giving you a lot more. insight into those schools. They're less curated, so they're able to see a little bit more of the real side of it, which can be super, super helpful. The fourth one, Instagram. Instagram lets you see in real time what's happening on that campus right now. Yes, in a COVID environment, it might look a little bit different than on a typical Saturday in Tuscaloosa, where there's pomp and circumstance around the games and roll tide and that campus life. Those might be down a little bit, but you're still able to see what's going on and the students that are tagging into that school. And the last one that I'll talk about a little more in depth is LinkedIn. LinkedIn really allows you to search that entire alumni network. Yes, these are going to be adults like all of us on this call, but they still have insight into where some great things happen, especially after college. So while you're able to see the campus virtually, you're able to get a little more insight that what it looked like after they left campus. That could be really, really helpful. I tell all my students LinkedIn's the most powerful network to leverage, especially when you're in college and looking at colleges, because so many alumni will connect with you and offer insight as you're starting to look at different colleges across the country and across the world. Okay, so slide 2, thank you, Brad. We're going to start with the college website. Yes, these are going to be the most curated. A school, if they ask for email, it allows it to be tracked. They're going to showcase all of the best parts of their campus. So you're not going to be able to see everything, but you're going to get really, really good idea what that campus looks like. As you visit more and more virtual tours through the campuses, you'll kind of start to figure out some of the ethos of the school and kind of what they're really wanting to showcase. If you look at schools maybe like a Caltech, you're going to see a lot more stuff inside the classroom. If you look at something maybe like an Ole Miss, you might see something that's more outside the classroom and the campus feel and the campus spirit. So as you're going through these, take notes. You're going to start to see what each individual school is kind of looking for and kind of what they're wanting to showcase to you. And that's kind of going to give them that feel that you might be looking for. So next one, websites for virtual tours. Always recommend start with YouTube. As I said before, they have their own channel. They're going to give you a variety of insights from inside the classroom, lectures, but also dorms, dining halls, what food is around. I think what Brad said with Google Maps, looking at what is around the campus in terms of food, that is a very, very big piece of it. There's a lot of message boards. Reddit will have a lot of those things that kind of talk about the different food options and different things like that. But that's a big part when you're living on campus, is what are those dining halls like? These YouTubes could have, on YouTube, have less curated videos. It could be just uploads from different students. If it's run by the school, it's going to be a little more curated. They're going to be showcasing what they want you to see. But it gives you a variety of different viewpoints from different angles, which maybe the virtual tour from the school website will not give. Lastly, with YouTube, there's also the comment section. Yes, we know comments can get a little out of hand on YouTube and a little more troll in nature, but they can be a good barometer, maybe that you're seeing a lot of comments saying that's not really how it is. Well, you'll know that maybe there's something more to look at within that video and that area of campus. So the comments can be very, very useful and starting to gain the knowledge of if this is a place that you want to be. Next slide, we're going to talk about Campus Reel and You Visit a little more depth. I love these sites. They really are tremendous at showing you from someone's cell phone what it really looks like right then. They're not giving you something that is been modified or been really just trying to showcase the one piece. They're really giving you the insights. It also lets you see all the variety of pieces of the campus, from the dining halls to the dorms, the classrooms. You're able to, the quads or the areas, the libraries, different things like that within the campus that you can just see from someone's phone in like a selfie-like perspective. And colleges don't have as much control over that content, so you're going to get a much more real version of the campus. They're extraordinarily useful and allow you to really get an idea of what that campus is about from students that are attending. And I think that's the great piece of it. And reality, most students that are on their campus are going to love it, and they're going to showcase it in an enthusiastic way that makes it really entertaining. So you're not just kind of going through the motions, but you're actually starting to learn something about where you could potentially be in the next 4 years. I just love that you can see so many different pieces of the campus. And also a lot of times the video is a little bit shorter. So you're not stuck with a virtual tour that could take an hour. You have to block out more time for that from a school website. But these videos, you can see how long they are. And that will allow you, if you only have 7 minutes to look at something in between classes, you're able to do that. Next one up is Instagram. We know endless students that you guys are on it. A lot of times this allows you to see what's happening on that campus right then. It does look a little bit different in the COVID environment, but still it's a tremendous way to see into the campus. So all you do is when you're in Instagram, press on the search button and then press the cursor in the search box, click on places, and then just type in the school, San Diego State, UCLA, Colorado College. And what's going to happen is you're going to see two different, you're going to have the top posts, so the ones that have had the most engagement, but then to next of it is the most recent posts. So this will be happening, what's happening right then. It is super helpful that you're able to kind of see what does a Tuesday look like versus what does a Saturday look like. They can be completely different because you're looking at what kids are tagging into that right at this moment. It's super, super helpful. And I know it might be weird, but it's been extraordinarily helpful for a lot of my students. Is you see someone that is maybe in a major or in the business building or engineering building, that's what you want to study. You can send them a message saying, hey, I'm really looking at this school and I want to study engineering. What's it like there? You can send them a message and have someone that is actually there and start a conversation. And it does seem odd, but it is so helpful, and most kids are so wanting to help you guys, help high schoolers learn about their college. They're going to brag about it. They're going to tell you about the good things, and it could be an easy tool to connecting with people that you don't know but are at that campus and possibly doing exactly what you might want to do, and give you tremendous insight. So using the recent posts or the top posts from that have been tagged to that school is by far one of my favorite ways for students to see inside those inside the schools of their college list. The last one is one that all my students hear so much about is LinkedIn. This is the most powerful platform that you can then use to connect with alumni of those colleges and start to, and also possibly into career fields from that school that you're interested in. It's so powerful. Now, first, you have to be at least 16 years old to create a LinkedIn account. So bear that in mind. This is going to be something that for sophomores, second semester, and juniors will be the main ones that are going to be turning 16. So you can't be on LinkedIn until that point. But then all you do is type the college name into the search bar, and then you just press alumni. Within that page, you can follow the school. You can be prompted to the people that know the alumni. And it ends up being a network of connections that right now, as a high school student or even as a college student, you can leverage for your benefit and start to build that network within different areas of that college or different interests. Or if you have a specific interest that you know you want to study, you can focus in right on those people, and they're going to help you. If they're on LinkedIn, they're going to help you because everyone wants to talk about their school. There's thousands of people. Building your network, as we all know, is super, super important. I know I went through a lot of that pretty fast. If you guys have any questions, send me an email, and I'm more than happy to walk you through how to navigate these different sites and finding the information that you want to know. If there's something that maybe you're struggling to find, reach out to us. We're happy to try and find that information and help you.
Yeah, we can actually stay online for a few minutes. So if you do have questions that you want to ask any of us right now, please do utilize that Q&A feature in Zoom. If you ask a very specific question about a specific university, we may not have the answer for you right this second. But as Eric said, please email us, especially if it's something specific like that. We'd be more than happy to chat after. But if you have some general questions now, please do ask. We are more than happy to just chat a bit more about the different ways to research universities when you may not be able to go visit them in person.
quiet group. No questions?
They might be typing a long one. Oh, there, I think I see a question. Oh, great question. Do you recommend connecting with college admissions people directly? I don't know if you want to field that one, Eric, since you're the resident LinkedIn expert.
Yes, I mean, I think the biggest theme that I'll be working on with my students this year is that these schools want to have a relationship with those students that they're accepting. So that might mean your list might be a little bit more targeted because you have to try and find ways to connect with the admissions office. The hard part is figuring out what are the questions that you can ask that aren't the typical. They don't want to have a question that you can just easily find on the website. So one of the task items I make my students do is when they watch the virtual tour or the info session is find something that you can ask about within that, where maybe they've prompted you. That kind of gives you an easy way to go, oh, I can ask this in my admissions office. So 100%, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to turn into someone that they're getting tired of. But if you have good, curious, interesting questions that show your interest in their school, no doubt it's going to help your chances. And so having that relationship with that school is I think, becoming more and more vital as schools have to really try and figure out who is going to go. And that's not as easy as if someone's traveled across the country. They're more likely to attend than if they didn't. So it's one of those pieces of, yes, contacting admissions, don't overdo it, and have good questions to ask that cannot be easily found on the website.
Yeah, just to add on to one of Eric's points about this idea of yield. So I think this year, we saw universities, some of them had double the number of applications because students were really taking advantage of that test optional policy that so many universities enacted this year, and that they're going to have the next cycle as well. And because of that, as Eric said, universities are now faced with this monumental task of figuring out, okay, of these tens of thousands of students, which ones are just applying because it's a challenge to see if they'll get in, and which ones are using us as sort of a backup option and don't really want to go here, and which ones are genuinely interested in coming. And one of the ways that they do that is by looking at that demonstrated interest, which is why Eric said, use your email on the school website, let them know that you were there. Spend that time. So a lot of these schools can collect that data and they can see, that you've spent X amount of time on this section of the website. So when you get, that notification about tracking cookies, that's what they're doing. So it does, it can help you if you're spending that time, attending these sort of tours that are held by the university, and speaking to admissions officers. All of that can help make the case that you actually are a serious applicant, and therefore they should make you an offer because you're more likely to accept. Any other questions? Please don't hesitate. We're here to help. Otherwise, actually, I don't know if we can put in the chat our email addresses, just so that if you do want to contact us later, you can just jot those down. So that's mine. Oh, I don't know, maybe I only sent it to the panelists. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So while you write those down, I think we'll go ahead and say goodbye. It looks like we don't have any other questions. So thank you to my co-panelists for your time and for operating our beautiful slides there, Brad. And thank you to all of the attendees for joining us this morning. And we hope this was helpful. And if you do have other questions, in future, please reach out anytime.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful week.